the stakes here with Assange? That he might be killed? Or would you say that what we should learn from this whole episode is the importance of information and facts?
They are killing Assange. Did you see him when he came out of the embassy? He's been living, he hasn't hardly seen daylight for 6 years, having committed no crime, just because Donald Trump, the commander-in-chief, wants him dead. He may very well end up dead. That is why the British people, he called them, as he was taken by those special branch officers into that van and driven away, he called upon the people of Great Britain to resist. I heard it, I watched it on the TV. Resist them, and they should. There should be a general strike in England to prevent him being extradited. There should be millions in the street, like there were before the invasion of Iraq. Although the powers that be probably wouldn't take any notice, they didn't of that. So Assange, we must all do everything that we can to protect him. Thinker. That's why he chose to do the job that he chose to do. That's why he is an activist. That's why we mention him in the same breath as John Pilger. Because he cares about other people.
Light, water and fire are essential to human life everywhere. And everywhere people use their constantly changing forms as symbols for other worlds, for beliefs, as means of reaching and connecting with supernatural forces. A figure that wonderfully brings together all of these elements is the image of Shiva Nataraja, one of the great symbols of the Hindu traditions. Shiva here is shown dancing, bringing the world into creation. He's surrounded by a ring of fire, which has so many practical and important uses, but also is destructive. In his right hand, he holds up the drum of creation. Around another of his right arms, he has a cobra ready to spit and poison, but his hand is up saying, "Don't be afraid." Under his feet, there is a figure being trampled down. That is ignorance. His hair is flying out to the side, reminiscent of the sacred waters of the Ganges. But Shiva can also destroy. And this constant energy, this constant dancing, which brings the world into existence, which keeps it going, which cuts it down, is a wonderful, wonderful symbol, which is so evocative of the energies of all life, that it's used at the CERN Nuclear Physics Center in Switzerland as a symbol for how science is trying to understand the subatomic particles that are the very basis of matter. And so outside CERN, there is a wonderful sculpture of Shiva Nataraja, the shadow of which at night is cast over the entire building, because this is the energy of the particles, the dance of the particles that make matter and life possible.
Well, do you think they'll drop the bomb? Mother, do you think they'll like the song? Mother, do you think they'll try to break my balls? Ooh, mother, should I build the wall?
All right, take one and two, one. This is as close as we can get to the base of the World Trade Center. You can see the two towers. Debris continues to fall and to rain on the people below. There are people hanging from the windows 90 stories up, and a number of bodies have actually hit the pavement. Take two. Take two and two, one. This is as close as we can get to the base of the World Trade Center. You can see the firemen assembled here, the police officers, FBI agents.
had noticed that the devastation that had happened in these fires was just outrageous. Entire neighborhoods were flattened, just flattened. They were dustified, just like what we had seen in September 11th. The debris field of these fires was like nothing anybody had ever seen before. It was, cars were turned upside down. There was not a toilet. There was not a granite countertop. Nothing was left. And of the many things that reminded me of exactly what we saw in September 11th was this: white smoke. That is not what you see in a forest fire. That is not what you see in a structural fire. That is something that is not normal at all. So in the first video I did a whole bunch of slideshows, and I walked through and pointed out these anomalies of the Fort McMurray fire and the Canyon fire. And within just a year or two of me posting that video, all the crazy stuff that started happening in California fires, where the exact same debris field of nothing but dustified buildings remained, came true and started happening. So, since I have been covering these strange fires where you see this orange glow, which is like the orange glow here that we see in the background of September 11th fire. If you look here where this gal is standing in this thing, you see the strange orange glow. You know, that there was this weird orange glow that happened in September 11th. It marked the way that the building burned, and yet the building itself was just consumed in this white smoke. It's just like what I saw in the Fort McMurray fires and in the Canyon fires. And I've been pointing this out in my channel in the California fires and all this for a long time, because what you actually see in a house fire is black smoke. What you see in a structural fire, an open air fire where you're burning carbon, is you will see soot from the unburned material in the wildly inefficient combustion process of an open air fire. You don't have to be a physics major or a chemistry major to understand that an open air combustion fire is very inefficient, and soot is what makes this black. It's just the incomplete burnt pieces on a very small level that are being blown up into the air. That's what the smoke is. And yet we didn't see black in any of the structural fires at the Fort McMurray or the Canyon fire or the California fire. So when I got a phone call today asking me if I knew that Notre Dame was on fire, the first question I asked was, what color is the smoke and what color is the flames? Were the flames this electrified plasma color orange? Or were we going to see something that looked more like a house fire? This deeper orange that you see in a real fire that we can document. There's hundreds of these normal fires that have been recorded. Or were we going to see something that looked more like this electric flame here? Unfortunately, folks, it's the electric flame. What we see here in the Notre Dame pictures is something that looks more like arc welding. And the white flame, the white smoke, and almost a yellowish green smoke. There is something here, folks, going on that is not normal. This is not normal. This is not normal. I want to take you here to an image of this particular grid here that shows you every single line of this particular piece of structure. Every single inch of it is on fire. This looks more like the briquettes in a hibachi grill after the grill has been seasoned and burning for about 45 minutes. It takes time to get every single inch of the briquettes on fire, and yet, you guys, these are not chemically treated. In fact, let's take a look here at the spire. Every inch of the internal structural components of this building, on the outside, on the inside, in the spire, the entire thing, it's like it's been electrocuted. These are not flames. This is some sort of an arcing, electromagnetic weirdness with a yellow, greenish, white smoke. And it's not just in one picture, it's in all of them, you guys. It's critical to recognize what they're showing us. People, this is not normal. There's something very weird happening here, and we have to recognize this and be willing to confront the uncertainty of this and just say, I know what they're telling us isn't true, and let me show you a couple of things that they're telling us that aren't true. They declared this building to be an entire loss within 1 100 minutes of the flame starting. This is within 100 minutes of this fire starting. They declared everything is burning, nothing will remain from the frame. And if you look at the frame of the building that I just showed you here, where you see every single inch of this, every single inch of every single structural support is quite literally on fire. Look at this. How did this happen? I've only seen this one time in the entire world where I've ever looked at this, and this happens to be what we saw in the people driving out of the California fires, where these trees, I'm gonna hit play here, and I want you to look at this, where these trees are engulfed. I mean, they're like the briquettes that you see in a hibachi grill. This is not normal. This is not what happens to trees in a normal outdoor fire, guys. The trees catch on fire and the flame goes. The entire tree, I mean, all the structure of the building does not turn into this briquette-like flame. Now, I'm not going to say that I know what happened. So there'll be a lot of people out here that are going to be telling you that this is, directed energy weapons. They're going to say these are lasers. And there's a lot of evidence that we have had some weapons. That we have had some weapons over the last decade or so that could do something like this. But my point is not to actually ask what is doing this, but to point you to the truth of who is behind this, because there's no doubt about that, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. First, let me take you to some other things that need to be pointed out about the news coverage here, and I want you to recognize that somehow the deputy mayor of Paris worked with the people at this cathedral to remove the artwork in time. And he's going to tell us that he had time to do that. But and yet, at the exact same news conference, they admitted that within 100 minutes they knew everything was burning and nothing will remain from the frame of the fire, which means this fire spread with such rapidity. And let me put this into perspective. It's a long distance for these fires to have spread if that were the case. And yet, obviously, guys, what we're seeing here is not a normal fire, because every single inch of the structural integrity of the building is what caught on fire, which it's not even catching on fire as I'm showing you. These have become briquettes of carbon for fodder of fire. So let me just point out one more time. He said that the building frame was demolished and there was nothing remaining of the frame within 100 minutes of the fire starting. And yet, I want you to listen to the deputy mayor of Paris talk about how they had time to get all the precious stuff that they could out of the cathedral.
But do you have any sense whether any of the artwork or artifacts inside have been saved?
Oh, the Ministry of Culture and our services and police department have been cooperating to make sure that everything that can be saved and has been moved. We have been sending trucks from the city department of transportation, and the collaboration between the state and between the city of Paris is very good and very satisfying.
Sure.
So things are being under control.
So some things have been taken out of the church then? Some things have been rescued?
Yes. Some paintings, and yes, there have been elements, being taken away, because when it started saved, it started with the roof. So there was, the reaction of the bishop team and I would say the administration, of course, to react.
Yes.
To protect, the values they could take out. So they did.
Well, that's good to hear, because we didn't know whether anything at all had been saved from the church. So that is wonderful to hear that at least some things.
Okay, there's something super wicked going on here. Super wicked. The only thing that we can do to make sense of this, guys, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they used directed energy weapons or if it was some strange, controlled demolition or whatever people want to say. Even if you want to say this was a cigarette butt, it doesn't matter how this fire started. What you have to know, folks, is that it would be impossible for the folks at the Louvre to go get a truck to pull all the stuff out of there within 100 minutes before the place was declared a disaster. There is obviously something else happening here. Now, if you don't want to recognize the obvious, then please turn this video off and go watch your mainstream media news.
On the evening of Monday, April 15th, the roof of Notre Dame caught fire and burned for 9 hours in what was reported to be a workplace accident as it was undergoing renovation and restoration. And the fire was definitely not arson, the media declared while the building was still smoldering. For people watching the Notre Dame get ravaged by fire on YouTube was kind enough to fact-check the broadcast with facts about 9/11 and terrorism. I mean, who doesn't love facts about 9/11? Hashtag 9/11 Israel. Luckily, the cathedral was closed to the public at the time and no one was harmed. 4 days earlier, 16 religious statues were removed from the top of the cathedral, so those didn't burn up. And people managed to create a human chain to get a bunch of other relics out, including the crown of thorns, while the fire ravaged the building. According to this article published in 2017, the Notre Dame was in dire need of repairs, but the government and the church couldn't decide who was going to pick up the tab. So a fundraiser was established to cover the $114 million bill, which they hope to raise over the next 5 to 10 years. But since the Notre Dame caught fire, some billionaires pledged donations, so I guess now they don't have to worry about covering those costs anymore, which is great. Unfortunately for the Yellow Vest protesters, President Macron was supposed to respond to them in a public address to the nation on the evening of April 15th. But that got postponed because it's not every day that a historic and cultural symbol goes up in a blaze of glory, except when they do, and by they, I mean both the Notre Dame in Paris and one of the holiest sites of Islam that was built 1,300 years ago, located in Jerusalem. The fire started in Solomon's Stables, one area of the historic mosque. And as an insensitive aside, between the name and the setting, we could have us a great plot surrounding the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. For the unassuming Ides of April, the 15th was a pretty hot day, and I don't mean just this past week. President Abraham Lincoln was pronounced dead, the Titanic sank, the Hillsborough disaster occurred, and Boston was bombed on April the 15th. In summary, definitely never leave your house on April the 15th. Just kidding, I'm sure Notre Dame wasn't an orchestrated event. BuzzFeed assured me of this. Jane wouldn't lie to us, she's not like that. She has a very stressful job of debunking any and all alternative narratives that sprout up on the web. And side note, I heard that in the BuzzFeed break room, due to budget cuts, they don't even have Costco bulk snacks. They only stock Sam's Club. So I'm sure she just forgot to mention that 875 of France's 42,258 churches were vandalized in 2018. And in March, another French church was set on fire. Jane explicitly stated that implying the Notre Dame fire was arson was anti-Muslim rhetoric in her article about how disinformation of the fire spread online. But what Jane failed to mention was that the groundwork was laid long ago to unite Europe into one homogenized globalist political entity, blurring the lines of nations, and through the wave of immigrants who, by the way, probably would rather go home. After a few generations of open borders, cultural dilution, and destruction of ethnic groups and nationalism, we've got an easily managed herd of human cattle with no sense of national identity, less resistant to a one-world government. It's trendy nowadays to publicly ridicule those who acknowledge the implementation of this plan, labeling them white supremacists, even though these seeds were sown long ago by a man considered as one of the pioneers of the European Union, whose political endeavors were financed by Rothschilds and Warburgs alike. Regardless of the melanin in your skin, the place you call home, or the god you pray to, we're all pretty much in this together. I'll admit it, I picked on Jane. I didn't have to stand on my tippy toes to reach this fruit. In fact, I had to bend down. No tea, no shade. I don't really have a problem with her as an individual, but rather what she and her profession have come to represent. The issue at large here is that, in the aftermath of an event like Notre Dame, the act of merely asking questions is villainized. Conspiracy theories are only for the mainstream media to propagate, and for the upper echelon to discuss. And in the glorious spirit of wrongthink, over the past week, various examples of predictive programming were highlighted by people who are far more observant than me. For example, the BBC ran an article in March showcasing the work of a man who made a Notre Dame replica out of matchsticks. Matchsticks, not toothpicks. Also referenced in the past week was an animated short film that debuted in 2012, detailing the agendas of the United States political leaders, the repercussions of their actions, and allusions to the Bible and ancient Egypt, all taking place in a post-apocalyptic setting. The pet goat title referring to the book that President George W. Bush was reading to children on September 11th. In one scene near the end, a Jesus-like character is seen floating down a river. As the spire collapses and crumbles in the background, the crown of thorns disappears, and reflected in cartoon Jesus' eyes is a ring of fire eerily similar to that of the black hole image, released last week. This short film was produced by a company named Heliofence, sporting that black hole sun imagery in their logo, and one could speculate that their name is a combination of Heliopolis, the Egyptian city of the sun, and Hierophant, which is the ancient Greek equivalent of a pope, but a pope of mystery religions. Now, I don't like breadcrumbs, but I am partial to puns. So we must ask a few burning questions surrounding the sequence of events leading up to the fire. Right, so released last week was this potato image of the black hole, which the band Soundgarden released a better quality version of in 1994 on their album cover, Super Unknown. One of the songs of this album was their hit, Black Hole Sun, and the music video for this track had a disturbing apocalyptic theme depicting the Earth being destroyed by the sun. Anyway, the band's lead singer, who funnily enough lived in Paris and had a restaurant there, was reported to have committed suicide after his final performance with Soundgarden, where he of course performed Black Hole Sun. After the release of these black hole photos, the news cycle has been propagating a petition to name the black hole after Cornell. Where am I going with all this? The black sun and the hexagonal black cube are esoteric symbols associated with Saturn, dubbed the real Lord of the Rings, and was considered by Babylonians as the original sun. The worship of Saturn was the Roman precursor to Christianity, and as others have so eloquently summarized, the cathedral they call Notre Dame was one of the nexus points of public manipulation from the time the Catholic Church planted roots in France. Despite the cathedral's beauty and history, is it still being used to manipulate the public? If you do too much wrongthink and noodle over the aforementioned recent events, paired with the propagation of the phoenix through popular culture, and the metaphor of Western history and culture burning down along with the cathedral only to be rebuilt by the rich, all during Christianity's holiest week, which concludes with Easter, well, you might not arrive at a conclusion, but a pun. The return of the sun during the year of the phoenix, making its presence known amongst the ancestors of those who brought an end to the ways of old.
I also want to show you this comment because this is a professional firefighter saying, I have worked fighting fire in a provincial park and have been around it my whole life. This fire could have absolutely been put out with choppers using water baskets. They hold approximately 500 gallons, which is not too heavy, and a good pilot can pinpoint the job. And lack of other resources was better to get past. You are very correct, sir. It completely appears they did not want to put this out. So there you go, here's a professional firefighter confirming what I said. And we can read here that the Paris Fire Brigade is a French army unit which serves the primary fire and rescue service for Paris. So it's an army unit. Let me get this straight. So they are telling us that this is part of the French army. The fire brigade has 8,500 people and yet they have not enough resources? Give me a break. Here's another good comment. Yeah, this is bullshit. 2-bedroom ranch house, small kitchen grease fire, 5 panic calls cops, 4 fire trucks come, 3 homeowners sue fire department for damages due to unnecessary and excessive use of water hoses. And yet we have one single fireman trying to put out the fire. And yet they call this as dramatic battle? Dramatic battle? Give me a break. This is from ODN, and I mean, they show the fire, but where is the dramatic battle? They are bringing some hose, but where is the putting out of the fire? You know, like, you know, I can't make sense of this, you know, like, they are just running around like headless chicken, really, and nothing is really happening. Okay, they are showing us the fire. Okay, we know about the fire already. Perhaps some CGI fire from China, and this fire, obviously we have to see that all the time. But where is the dramatic battle? The title of the video is Dramatic Battle Against the Fire at the Notre Dame. So I'm still looking for the dramatic battle here. I'm quite not getting there. And I see fire, but not dramatic battle. Okay? I'm still looking for the dramatic battle. But if you see that, please let me know in the comments below, because I can't see any dramatic battle. So I'm still looking at this clip. You can see the smoke, and we can see fire. And by the way, also notice that they are burning the stone. Okay? It's not the wood that is burning, it's the stone. Okay? When was the last time you saw burning stone? The whole spire was stone. It is not of wood, and yet it was burning. So it must have been a dew attack, which is direct energy weapon. It couldn't have been anything else. The stone is not burning from usual fire, only from direct energy weapon. Okay? And I'm still looking for the dramatic battle here, but I don't see any. And we are almost at the end of the clip. And look, I'm going to roll back in here. They have 1, 2, 3, 4 maybe, 4 fire cars there, and one stream of water, one water hose. Okay, spraying kerosene probably, or some kind of oil to make it even bigger. I mean, this is just madness. Dramatic battle, okay? This is dramatic battle. Ladies and gentlemen, back to theater. Look at that, leisurely walking, no rush. They are just walking, and then they want to use this kind of robot as well, and the robot doesn't want to go straight, and they don't know how to use it, and they are just like puppets. Someone also mentioned that there was a Paris on the 17th of March just a month ago, and it was the ugly Saint Sulpice, the second biggest church in Paris. And fair enough, I found it here in Sputnik International News. This is the Saint Sulpice Church in Paris, caught on fire on the 17th of March. Let's have a look at this clip. Here's another clip of this fire, and again only one water hose is used to put out this fire. I mean, give me a break. There were other comments also pointing out the following. The 15th of April seems to be a magic day. It's the day of the death of Abraham Lincoln, the sinking of the Titanic, the Boston Marathon bombing, and the Notre Dame Cathedral fire. Do you think that is unintentional? They are playing with these numbers, okay? They have to use these magic numbers for their rituals. Someone pointed out that on my previous video, the reporter was saying that there's a lot of wood inside, and that is what is burning, and that is actually bullshit, because the building was from stone and he tried to look for wood inside, but he couldn't. And I think this is a very good point, because where do you see the wooden structure of the roof? They were telling us that the roof is full of wood, but I don't see any wood here. It's all made of stone. Look at this stone structure, no wood here. And this was the first to be brought down by the fire. I can imagine that the Notre Dame was some kind of central electric generator. Looking at this structure, and I think this was the main antenna, that's why it had to be brought down. Another interesting thing that was pointed out in the comments is that the reporter was saying that there is strong winds, but we can't see any wind. And also, where's the black smoke? Usually when we burn fire, there's black smoke. So I guess that's another proof for the dew being used. Definitely a direct energy weapon.
Trying their best to put this fire out, but the wind is also very serious, and I think that's what continues to be so disheartening, because they're fighting so hard.
Another interesting thing that was pointed out to me in the comments is that Victoria Woodhill, who was one of the reporters, is a food critic and not a news reporter. So I found the profile of Victoria Woodhill, and we can read here: the versatile Victoria Woodhill appears on Eyewitness News team as feature reporter on variety segments including Taste with Tori, a tour of the region's great eats and people behind them. So her main thing is the cuisine, not news reporting. And why was she in Paris? Okay, so guys, these reporters are actors. There's no truth on the news. All of these people are actors fulfilling several roles. They are getting paid for being an actor, not for being a reporter. Here's another interesting thing. Even though the fire was put out, they are cutting off statues from the Notre Dame. This is from the Washington Post. Let's have a look what they are doing here. So they are cutting off the statue after the fire has been extinguished. And it seems like the statue is very strong because they are working on it for quite some time now. It started around 2 hours here, and they are still trying to cut the stone off. You know, like, this is a really strong material here. 5 hours 23 minutes they were able to cut into the stone structure only like 30 centimeters. I think this is actually an art theft.
And it's still tripping me out. I mean, I'm tripping balls here.
There's tobacco and marijuana in there. That's all it is. The combat.
You can tell it's real because it looks so fake, honestly. We'd have way better CGI if it was fake.
I want to bring this to your attention, and I'll play it. It's in French, so it doesn't really do. I'm not going to probably play the sound. I'll just play it so you hear that it is sound, and it is coming, and it is a real interview, and it is French. And I have run it through the translators, and what they're saying is really what they're saying. But basically, it's the architect of restorations for Notre Dame. He was retired, and for 20 years or whatever, he was in charge of the restorations of Notre Dame. And he says, the media person asked him, so you're telling us that this type of timber doesn't burn like that? And the architect of Notre Dame, the restorations dude, says no. Oak that's 800 years old doesn't burn like that. You would need a lot of kindling to succeed. Let's listen to the rest of it. It's only a couple minutes, but I think it's very, very interesting. And I'll tell you what that you can't see the subtitles, I'll read them. He says it's 800 years old. It's very, very hard. Try to burn it. I've never tried, but old oak, it's not very obvious at all. It'd take a lot of kindling to succeed. I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of the sound because we don't know French anyway. He says, I think that no. It stupefies me a lot. And where does this thought lead you? And to what hypothesis does it bring you? I don't have any hypothesis that I could tell you, says the man. Let me just interpret that for you. I'll translate that from French to English. Bro, I retired from Notre Dame. I want to keep my pension. That's exactly what the translation is. That's a literal translation. I don't have any hypothesis that I could tell you. Which hypothesis could I propose? He asks. Wow, that was quick. Listen to what this guy's saying, folks. There's no way that it could burn like this. I can't tell you what I think or they'll take my money, but damn, that was fast that thing burned up. Let's keep going. Then we could do anything else in order for it to go this fast. He says, he just said, I don't think of anything that I could do to make it burn that fast. I'm lost in conjectures, he says. I mean, I retired in the 90s, and just before I retired, he says, listen to this, just before I retired, we updated all the electrical wiring of Notre Dame, so there's no possibility of a short circuit. This is what the guy just said. Before I retired, we updated all the wiring. He says there's no possibility of a short circuit.
I'm sorry. Don't worry.
Evidently takes a long time to talk in French. We updated to conform with all the contemporary norms, even going very far, he says, as in the detection against fire in the cathedral, with elements of measurement indicators of aspirations and so on. So they updated it with the complete modern wiring. They updated it with complete modern fire suppression and monitoring equipment. And it would have allowed us to detect a fire at the bottom of the cathedral, and then it goes on to say notify the firefighters immediately. Plus there's at least 2 men, 24 hours, security on site, watching permanently. Yes, permanently. Could there be a failed alarm mechanism? Impossible? He says, well, everything's possible, but I have trouble believing it because, well, it was a colossal work, and then, you know, it's like all of these constructions, sites of historical monuments, especially Notre Dame. We have technical, normative, and control support, and so on. So it's very, very significant, he says, that you won't see anyone else there. He says there's never anyone else there. It's very highly controlled. And I was there, and I have to say I'm rather stunned. And during the 13 years that you were the chief of the building, you had no knowledge of the beginning of a fire? It never happened? He says, no, I'm very happy about that.
Because this really is about the end of the church age, it's also about an attack on Christianity. And for this New World Order to progress, it has to extinguish Christianity and Christians. But keeping that in mind, this is from a movie called Lords of Chaos. It just came out about a month ago or so. This is based on a true story about a Norwegian death metal band called Mayhem. Many people called them the most evil band in the world. So the members of this band got off on burning down churches. They did a lot worse than that, but this is just one of the ways they acted out. And they showed this in the film. They show these kids burning down churches. So it's interesting. You're looking at the man that's responsible for burning down churches in America. He'd actually burned down 3 black churches down in Louisiana. So a few interesting things about him. One is that his father is a police officer, but number 2 is he was in a heavy metal band. So this is where we're using our spiritual eyes, right, to read between the lines. So here's an image of the guy, and of course you see the upside down cross there, black metal. This is what he was into. And he'd actually built an altar for a pagan god. So I don't think it'd be any kind of a big leap to think that there's a good chance this young man actually saw Lords of Chaos. It was about, what they say, the most evil band in the world. So I imagine a lot of people into metal and heavy metal and black metal would be really into this. And even if he didn't see it, he's still acting out the same processes. This is a spirit at work, and it's attacking churches. But more than just attacking the building, I believe it's attacking Christianity. It's attacking Christians. Literally a battle against God. It's also important to realize that before this fire in Paris, churches have been being burned down in France and Europe for a little while now. France has seen a spate of attacks against Catholic churches since the start of the year. Vandalism that's included arson and desecration. Vandals have smashed statues, knocked down tabernacles, scattered or destroyed the Eucharist, and torn down crosses, sparking fears of a rise in anti-Catholic sentiment in the country. And even with that, I don't think it's just about the Catholics. This is more of an attack on Christians in general, Christianity. This is a spirit at work here. Last Sunday, the historic church of St. Sulpice in Paris was set on fire just after midday mass on Sunday. Although no one was injured, police are still investigating the attack, which firefighters have confidently attributed to arson. And just last month at the St. Nicholas Catholic Church in France, a statue of the Virgin Mary was found smashed, and the altar cross had been thrown on the ground. Also in February, another church in France, there was an altar cloth was burned and crosses and statues of saints were smashed. And this is from an article from the Voice of Europe. It says, in a rare candid moment, German media reported at least 200 cases of damaged churches in the region of Bavaria alone every year. In addition, attacks on summit crosses are also increasing in the region's mountains. Crosses on several mountaintops have been toppled and destroyed with axes or saws. And this spirit is staying very busy. It's not just at work in Europe, it's not just at work in America. This is happening all over the world. We even have stories like this right here. Anger is France sees 10 Catholic churches attacked in 1 week. The 7-day spree of vandalism has seen Catholic churches targeted across France, sparking fears of a fresh wave of anti-Christian sentiment in the country, including one church being defiled with human excrement. So again, this is a spirit we're seeing manifest, and we're seeing it increase in activity. This headline right here says it all to me. Notre Dame Cathedral to be rebuilt as what? A multicultural center, Christian faith being disassembled. If we even get to see this be rebuilt, it'll be very interesting to see what they put in place. But we're already starting to see the narrative play out here. This will have something to do with the One World Order, pulling all the religions in together under one. And I'm sorry to say that Catholicism has betrayed so many of you. Catholicism is going to play a massive role in this. In my opinion, Pope Francis is playing his role. Right here you see this from 2014. Pope Francis and Rick Warren unite for Global Chrislam Conference. This is the merging of Christianity and Islam. So this headline is from just 1 year later. In New York, Pope Francis embraced Chrislam and laid a foundation for a one world religion. And now we have this story from 2019. Vatican officially releases Chrislam logo for Pope Francis' upcoming Servant of Hope tour to the Muslim nation of Morocco. But as you can see, the logo there in the center, and that's Chrislam. That's a merging of the Christian symbolism along with the symbolism from Islam. So do you see how we follow that thread and see how Pope Francis has been hard at work over the last few years to merge all of the religions? Once again, the end game is the one world system.
This new Pew, right? 23% of Americans have no religion anymore, right? And people are like, that's a terrible thing. People have lost faith. No, they've lost faith in religion. They're called nuns, right? So on that little checklist, you know, what religious denomination are you? None. 23%. Bigger than evangelicals, bigger than the Catholics, bigger than everything. And you wonder why, right? I wonder why. Let me see. Maybe it's because thousands of priests molest children. Maybe it's because people are strapping suicide bombs on their chest and they're blowing people up so that they can get a bunch of stuff in the afterlife, right? Maybe it's because of that. Maybe you have countries where you have Hindus and Muslims fighting each other. Maybe you have the fact that like almost every war, major war at least, has had some kind of religious, start to it, right? Right, religion. You know what it comes from? The Latin word religare, which means, ironically, to bind, to yoke, to strap you down, to keep you in your place of misery. And that's what a lot of people are into. That's why drug use is going crazy. That's why people are killing themselves more than ever before. People just want to escape. Well, they're not going to be able to escape 3 days of darkness unless they know what I'm going to share. For the first time, no religion has topped a survey of Americans' religious identity. That's right, according to a new analysis by a political scientist, they say that the non-religious have edged out the Catholics, who, by the way, celebrating Palm Sunday. And what's Palm Sunday all about? It's about the arrival of the King. They're laying down the palms, right? 6 days, right before the Passover. There's the big prophecy where Jesus comes in riding an ass's colt. You know what an ass is? You're looking at it! I can be an ass. According to scripture, a lot of us are asses. Balaam, right, an angel of God, spoke to Balaam, the prophet, through his ass. Sometimes God speaks to us in ways that we can't comprehend because we're, a bunch of beasts, a bunch of animals. That's what the book of Ecclesiastes says, at least, that men don't even know that they're brute beasts. But he comes into town riding a colt's ass. And people are laying down these palms because they know that salvation is come. Ironically, right before that Passover, right before that big deal, right before Ishtar, right? What do you have? You have 3 days of darkness. You have that in the Old Testament. Remember Moses? His name means literally drawn out, to draw out. Egypt is symbolic of our ignorance. Egypt is this new world order. Egypt is this beast system that we're a slave to. Well, maybe not a slave so much if you know the truth, right? That we are trapped in the darkness of. Well, not so much if you have the light, right? If you put on that breastplate of faith, the helmet of salvation, you understand what all this means. You understand that you're in the world but not of the world. There were 3 days of darkness in Egypt. 3 days. But you see, it actually was a beautiful thing. That's what my video is about. Because after the 3 days, what happens? The firstborn, all of Egypt, all the beasts, all the insects, every firstborn creature in Egypt put to death. Now, who do you think that firstborn is? It's the idea of who you think you are. It's the person who can't get ahead. It's the person who never feels good about themselves. It's a person that's just too insecure. It's a person that doesn't have love in their life. It's a person that is always broke. It's a person that is always sick. A person that can't get ahead. A person that can't take a step. It's the lame person. It's the deaf person. It's the blind person. It's the dumb person. It's the dead person. Lazarus person. That was the big deal when Jesus was coming in to Jerusalem, which was the teaching of peace. That day when the Christ comes into our heart, starts to lighten the load, and starts to open our eyes to the truth, because that is the hope of glory after all. Christ in you. When he said, you need me to go away, that day I can go to the Father's house and prepare a place for you, that where you are, there I am too. Within, he rides an ass's colt into town. Balaam had an angel speak to him through an ass. That's right, yeah. God uses the ass to bring forth the truth at times. Riding that ass's colt on into town. All cool, all side saddle. Right before the Passover. Right before that day of darkness. Right before that time when the lights go out. And then the truth finally rises again. That moment when you are in such darkness that you're screaming out, just like Jesus screamed out on the cross, Father, why have you forsaken me? Where you feel like it's all done for, where you feel like there's nothing going your way, where you feel like you're done for. Days of darkness come to an end. But right now, it looks like 23% don't have religion. 23% aren't binded by religious ideals or lies anymore. Now, I'm not saying that if you go to church, you go to temple, you go to mosque, I'm not telling you any of it's bad. I'm just saying that if you think that where you're going is where you're really supposed to go, you're wrong. Because the truth is already within you. God wants you to go. He says you don't need to go door to door knocking. You know Jesus? You know the Lord? You don't need to do that anymore. He said, because in that day, I will write my laws on your hearts and on your minds. You know the truth. It's there, but you gotta seek it. You gotta ask for it, right? But you can't ask for it according to Scripture unless God draws you, right? Like he couldn't let Pharaoh, he couldn't let the enemy know what was coming his way. He had to release Israel. He had to get them out of there. You don't think Israel was scared? You don't think they were worried about the YouTubers talking about 3 days of darkness, saying it's coming upon us? Let me tell you what happened in Venezuela when the lights went out. Where you have United States people forgetting about their faith, people giving up on God, supposedly, right? Saying there's no evidence, and yet evolution, big time lie. Look, the bottom line is we know evolution isn't a thing, right? Because we're programmed. Darwin had no idea about DNA. DNA is we just learned about this just a little while ago, right? 23. What? Come on, Jacob. How do you make a connection? Because that's the news. That was the news. It all happened in the same day, 23. It's a number. It's a number there for a reason. It's a message, God's message within us. That's what he says without saying it. A lot of people too worried about this 3 days of darkness. But the darkness in Venezuela is getting people to their knees. Darkness in Venezuela is getting people playing tambourines and having a good time and praising God for the first time in a long time, right? Darkness has a tendency of waking you up. But we're not like those in darkness. Remember? That's what the apostle says. We're not those in darkness, right? We don't let the darkness overtake us because we have the light. We have the truth. We know that whatever's going to come, it's all part of the story, all part of the plan. And guess what? I know the end of the story. And the end of the story is salvation, indeed. And it is also what you make it. Because whatever a person believes, they become. So, you want to know about the darkness? You want to know about the 3 days of darkness, everybody? Egypt you're in the darkness, right? And if you don't know you're in the darkness and you don't wake up from the darkness, this is like one of those things. This is what like the prophets of old would do. They'd come in and they'd be like, okay, let me tell you something. You don't get it, but I just had a dream and there's 3 days of darkness is coming. But I see that they're walking around, they're like blind people. They can't see, they don't know what they're doing. They're bumping into people, they're doing all sorts of things. And the prophet would come out and he'd say, you gotta stop. You gotta stop, because if you don't stop, it's gonna get dark. It's gonna be dark. So do I have any inside scoop about whether the lights are gonna go out? The lights have gone out in the hearts of people everywhere, okay? And I think it's not a bad thing that you see that people are leaving religion, because I hope that they come to Christ, to the truth, to the anointing of God, to love. In 1 Thessalonians, it talks about a little bit of darkness, okay? And I want to end with this. But of the times and seasons, nobody knows. For you yourselves know that Christ comes upon you like a thief in the night. You don't know when the truth is gonna, appear. You don't know when you're gonna be slapped up inside your head and said, you know what? Here's a little bit more to deal with. Here's a little bit more stress for your life to get you to snap out of it. Here's a little bit more to remind you that your hardships, what you're going through, is there to get you to the truth, to God. That's what God does. He uses all of our infirmities and everything. Right now, I look like I'm all great. I was at the gym before, and I was miserable, and I was in pain, and I was sick, because he had to get my attention. And sometimes God uses our infirmities to get our attention, but we're not like those that are in darkness. We got the light, and we know that there's a purpose for it. So whatever's going to be is going to be. And I'm going to glorify God, and I'm going to use every bit of this infirmity. I'm going to use every bit of my pain. I'm going to use every bit of it to help you all find joy, because I am joyful indeed. For when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes like travail upon a woman with child. Think about that for a second. Travail. It's about pregnancy. It's about pregnancy. Sudden destruction, like travail of a woman with child. That's what this is all about. It's about giving birth to the truth. It's about being set free. It's about breaking free from regular, whatever it's called, religion. It's about breaking free. It's about being no longer yoked. You, brethren, are not in darkness, that the day should overtake you as a thief. You're all children of the light, children of the day. We are not of the night, nor of the darkness. Therefore, let us not sleep as others do. Wake up, right? Wake up! Don't be drunken as those that are drunken at night, but let us, who are of the day, listen very clearly. Let us be sober, think straight. Don't be all scared all the time. Putting on the breastplate of faith. Guard your heart with faith. Know that what you're going through is there for you. Working together for your good. Romans 8:28, I believe it is. I don't know, I'm not a thesaurus. The breastplate of faith and love, and the helmet of the hope of salvation. See, that's now. Protect your thoughts. Know that you're going to come through this. Know that it's all working together for you good. Know that the Palm Sunday, the palms that they're lying down right now, is in preparation for the King.
They're playing out a storyline. They're playing out. They're using revelations from the Bible as a storyline, as a storybook, and they're trying to sort of that's why that's the most embedded book. You know, and King James altered it and changed it around and inverted all of true Christ's teachings. True Christ's teachings weren't really anything to do with most of the stuff that's written in there. The core of Christ's teachings were about compassion and caring about other people, and not about
Well, you have a vengeful God and all that.
All the Old Testament stuff, yeah. I mean, that's Anu. All of the Old Testament is basically, Anu and his crew, who Anu and his people like to imitate. They come down here and imitate others and pretend to be things that they aren't.
So what about these gods which have all come to Earth?
Okay, so
why now?
Okay,
and
so
why do they have to? These gods? Why must they be in human bodies?
There is, because this particular changeover in this transfer point has never happened before. It's never happened like this before. There are multiple cycles that are coming to an end. Yeah. There are multiple. There's a 3,600 year cycle that's coming to an end. I think there's a 13,000 year cycle that's coming to an end. I think there's a 25,500 year cycle that's coming to an end. So they're all coming to an end at this point. And so there was sort of a need to come down and experience this changeover in a physical body down here now, because the experience to be in a physical body now and go through this changeover is like nothing else that's ever happened before.
Why is that important?
Well, because it's going from a race, a growing species is going from being completely in the dark to then all of a sudden being completely knowing and understanding what's gone on with them. It's not everybody on this planet is in amnesia. So this vampiric consciousness that's here, that's in control of it, are coming here with memories. They're coming down here with memories. There's an interesting analogy that somebody said to me before, and I sort of elaborated on it a little bit. It's almost like it's holographic, very, very, very real video game where they came down and they had the rule books and all the cheats, and we were left and scattered across the planet with nothing. So they're holding the cheat book. They have the cheat book, but so we're now just going to sort of play it out, and it's going to unfold. So people here have already chosen if they haven't learned the lessons, or they haven't fully understood the lessons to be learned in 3D master-slave dualistic reality, then they will go to another frequency or a similar type of plane as this one and redo the life cycle lessons over and over again. If the ones that, because I believe the ones that are going to be left here are going to be the ones to build the new paradigm, and the new paradigm is going to be built with an understanding and an acceptance of each other, where it's not about it will be about where we'll understand that harming somebody else, or attempting to harm somebody else, because you'll have an intrinsic understanding that the other person is actually you. There are still warriors on this planet who are standing up and speaking and fighting back and doing something. So they haven't, they are trying to do it, and it seems like they're getting closer to it. But they completely control the media in every way. So, how do I really know that what they put on the television is really what's going on? I don't know if any of that's true. I don't really know if that's a bit like wag the dog. Because they want to blur the lines of everything so that there's confusion. And so I think I said before, like one of their mottos, Masonic mottos, is Ordo ab chaos, which is order out of chaos. And so what they want to do is create literally as much chaos by blurring the lines of everything, whether it's sexuality or whatever, so that then they can implement their new world system.
Well, you said this was a little bit of a different configuration. Tell me about the late load process. What was different about this particular launch?
Sure. So one of the unique features of this launch is the cargo late load. So we have built some new electrical and mechanical ground support equipment that allows us to actually take the vehicle from the configuration you see here, where it's vertical at the pad, it can actually convert down back into the horizontal position. We're able to drive what we call a mobile clean room right up to the tip of the fairing so that we can load time-sensitive research and other perishable items that NASA needs to provide within and other perishable items that NASA needs to provide within 24 hours of launch.
And that's a pretty tight turnaround, but there's a critical science that's actually being loaded into Cygnus. And that's a pretty tight turnaround, but there's a critical science that's actually being loaded into Cygnus to accommodate this. One of them is the Rotor Research 12 mission. That'll be arriving at the station, and then, of course, be one of the first, actually, experiments to come out of Cygnus once it arrives. Now, we have some photos of rollout here. Tell me about the rollout process once it's ready. To go, what does that look like?
Yeah, so that looks like just a beautiful evening at the Eastern Shore.
Go, what does that look like?
Yeah, so that looks like just a beautiful evening at the Eastern Shore there for rollout. Yeah, so that looks like just a beautiful evening at the Eastern Shore there for rollout.
Step 421, switch to nav.
Warp nav to navigate.
LC nav. Warp nav to directly. Copy that nav. Check 422 complete.
Now under 2 minutes for launch, everything's still looking good during this automatic countdown.
T-minus 30, T-minus 1 minute, 30 seconds on my mark. Mark. T-minus 1 minute on my mark. Mark.
death of St. George, the dragon of darkness attacks the village and carries off the beautiful princess. Then along comes the hero, St. George, who vanquishes the dragon and frees the princess. But in the earlier versions of this story, the dragon is the terrible aspect, the princess herself. So the hero is actually saving the princess from her own altered ego. In the later versions, the innocent princesses and fair maidens are often victimized by an ugly witch. And yet the witch, the devouring hag, and the ogress, like the dragon, all represent the alter ego, or terrible aspect, of the princess herself. And while the witch may soar across the sky with disheveled or flaming hair, she also takes the form of a serpent or fire-breathing dragon when she grows wrathful. It was said of the witch's hair that it could bring rain, hail, wind, and lightning, exactly what ancient nations said of the comet. The princess of folk legends is a descendant of the more archaic goddess figures. The earlier goddess has a dual nature, as radiant mother and devouring dragon. The goddess Kali of the Hindus was renowned for her beauty. But in her terrible aspect, her long disheveled tresses stretched across the heavens, blackening the sky, sweeping away the sun and the stars. We encounter surprisingly similar images in the goddess Coatlicue of the Aztecs, the Sumerian Inanna, Egyptian Hathor, Canaanite Astarte, Greek Gorgon, Hindu Rangda, and in the medieval witch, the most popular later caricature of the angry or lamenting goddess. Was the terrible goddess a spectacular, fear-inspiring cometary stream? Our word for comet comes from the Greek word cone, used for long, flowing hair. The torch, the flame, streamers, streaming feathers, various symbols of brooms, whisks, and flails. Around the world, these images signify both the angry goddess and the doomsday comet. The land of Sumer, a cradle of civilization in ancient Mesopotamia. A prototype of the early goddess figure is the Sumerian Inanna. The texts describe her as a great dragon called the pure torch that flares in the sky. Inana herself declares, I was the blazing, the brilliant fire. I was the fire whose flame and sparks rained down on the rebel land. I was the conflagration which shone forth in the heavens when the heavens shook and the earth trembled and quaked. Who then was this comet-like goddess, Inanna? For the very first astronomers of ancient Mesopotamia, the goddess Inanna is not an unknown cometary intruder. She is a planet. Planet Venus. In later Babylonian astronomy, the planet Venus was still remembered as the lamenting star. It was called the witch star. In the Americas, Aztec histories remembered Venus as the great feathered serpent, and they called Venus the smoking star, the very phrase they used for a comet. The stargazers of Peru knew Venus as Chasca, the long-haired star, the most common phrase for the comet among ancient peoples. But the goddess wore two faces. Before she acquired her terrible aspect, she shone in the sky with awe-inspiring beauty. We came to know the goddess as the Greek Aphrodite, the Latin Venus, daughter of heaven, the prototype of the beautiful princess. One of her names was Aphrodite Kumeathel, the long-haired or fiery-haired Aphrodite. In the language of ancient astronomy, Aphrodite Kumeathel means the comet Venus. The Greeks and Romans shared the tradition of an archetypal comet of extraordinary beauty, radiating its hair in all directions. This was the Roman portrait of that comet, a symbol of celestial power and glory. Its name was the Star of Venus. So we're not just dealing here with princesses and angry goddesses and serpent dragons that turn out to be the doomsday comet. We are confronting the mythical parent of comets, a comet inspiring both veneration and dread.